So one of the trickiest parts of writing a grant proposal is basically the formulation of a proper budget. So whether you are writing for a specific project grant or for an ongoing program or operational funds, the budget is the single most important element. It is a key element of most grant proposals and serves as a blueprint for spending the project's funds. Therefore, an effective proposal budget should outline the proposed project in fiscal terms and help reviewers to determine how the project will be conducted. Therefore, it should also demonstrate your organization's ability to manage the money in an effective manner, how competent you are. Do you have that ability? Do you understand what are the nitty-gritties of making a budget and looking after the finances? For doing this purpose, you need to be very realistic. So whatever the estimations that you are presenting, that should be based on research and more close to the actual rates. So as much as realistic, the better. You would also need to clearly outline the total cost of the initiatives. So whatever the steps are involved, try to specify each and every step and include the cost of those steps. And when you include all those steps, then total them at the end. So the total cost should be mentioned there. If you have any other sources of funding, for example, in some cases you already may have some committed funding, or you may have some funding, some which have been leveraged from other sources. Do mention that. Such kind of funding basically influence the granting organization, and it is considered as a plus point. You need to remember that present your budget in a tabular manner. Okay, so whatever tool you are using for making your budget, for example, if you are making your budget in Microsoft Excel, that is fine. If you can also use it, prepare it on the Word document. But that should be in a tabular form so that it is easy to understand. As I said earlier, if you have internal contributions toward the project, do mention them. And then focus on the expenses. Now in the expenses part, you can have several heads. I'll be showing you a budget, a real budget that we have made for a project, and you can see several heads over there. But here, as you can see on the screen, the expenses may include the salaries and benefits, the contract payments, the rent and administration costs, the program material, traveling and lodging, and any other sort of expenses. Your figures should be based on sound research. This is very important because the granting organizations, they usually have done their research. They have funded several similar kind of projects in the past. So they have a good idea of what is the actual cost or what is the appropriate cost for a particular head. If you have made any assumptions, you need to clearly state them. And whatever heads you are putting in your budget, if it needs explanation, then you will provide some explanation as a footnote at the end of your budget. I'll show you an example of this as well. Now, another important point is make sure that all the calculations are accurate and that the budget balances. Please keep in mind that if you follow the accepted international accounting standard procedures and the audit, that is going to be considered again a further plus point. And you can re-emphasize this point by attaching your previous audit reports as well. So if your organization is 2, 3 or more years old and you have conducted audit over that period, so the audit reports must be attached with the proposal. Now, these are some of the key points that you need to remember while preparing your budget. So a budget must be feasible. Budget information about activities planned and personnel who will serve on the project provides reviewers with an in-depth picture of how the project will be structured and managed. Therefore, the budget details usually reveal whether a proposed project has been carefully planned and may ultimately be feasible or not. Excuse me. Now, the next point is that the budget must be complete. It must give an accurate assessment of all cost items and cost amount that are deemed necessary and reasonable. It should include all the cost of any personnel, supplies, and activities required by the project. So the project needs to be feasible within the budget presented. So if major cost areas are omitted or underestimated, the project as proposed will probably not be considered as feasible. Okay? Now, the third point is that how specific your project is. So even if the proposal is for projected cost, it is critical to itemize those costs in as much detail as you possibly can. So it is not sufficient, for example, to have a line item for personnel salaries and leave it at that. Instead, you must provide details such as job title and description of function, what is the pay rate, the number of hours expected that a position to be involved in the project, and if you have the person available, so the name of the person should also be there. Now, it is perfectly good to have general categories of expenditures, and this will help to organize your proposed budget, but you should break down those general categories into specific line items, and within those items give a clear description of what the items are and how they relate to the grant request. Now, the next point is reasonable. So over the course of the project, many different stakeholders are going to review the budget and refer back to it. The decisions made now at the proposal stage will continue through the life of the grant, and others will make decisions based on it at future stages. Therefore, you need to remember that this is the appropriate time and you should well spend it to prepare a reasonable budget. So when I say a reasonable budget, I mean that a budget which is based upon actual cost wherever possible. Now the budget will become, if it is approved, the budget will become an integral part of the obligation to the sponsor, particularly regarding the time and effort commitments that you have made. Therefore, this budget will evolve into a useful management tool during the negotiations, and if the project is funded, the budget will become the financial plan used by the funding agency to provide support. Now, if you are expecting some variations in your proposed budget, or you can see that the costs are probably going up or because of some unseen changes in the market, and you want to increase the budget, so this may require sponsor approval, and you will have to approach them for this purpose. Now, check your math is the next point. That this may seem elementary and very common kind of thing, but often in the rush of putting together a grant proposal, revising budgets and incorporating comments from multiple sources, you may forget to recalculate your numbers. Now, for resolving this problem, I would suggest, or for avoiding this kind of issue, my suggestion would be that you use the Microsoft Excel tool and try to total all the cost by using some formula. I'll be sharing with you, I'll be telling you how can you make total of different costs, different heads. So by putting a simple formula and highlighting all those cells that you want to add, so if you want to make changes in it, you can do it and the computer will automatically readjust the total value. Do follow the instructions. Now, every grant includes specific instructions, which often include budget forms, and they do have some specific formats as well for making the budget. Try to follow them carefully. Now, if you need more space to amplify or particularize, and if the grant instructions or forms allow for this, you can take that opportunity to state what you believe is necessary to justify your budget proposal. Now, if the space does not allow for this, then consider an attachment, an extra document, which indicates your proposal in a manner consistent with the grant instructions. Now, the last point is that you need to make sure that your proposed budget is in line with the requirements of the granting organization. It should not be overly aggressive. Usually, the overly aggressive proposal will not be successful. So, your budget proposal should have a rational basis in reality and be proportionate to your granting organization's requirements. Alright, so these are some of the key points that you need to remember while making your budget. Now, in the next video, I am going to show you a couple of budgets, two different budgets that we have made for different projects, and you can see different heads, and all these points will be covered over there. Okay, so two examples are coming up in the next video. I'll see you there in